yeah, there's some people who are scared of changes in general.
Wiki, would you be able to touch on how Covenants allows for that to happen, the sharing of UTXOs, if it was implemented?
Yes, yeah. So very simply, right? I mean, let's just start with the way Lightning works, kind of, you know, simplified, right? Lightning is just a multisig. It's a two of two multisig with the ability to unilaterally exit, which means either party can settle their funds on chain without the permission of the other party, right? So you're literally sharing a UTXO every time you open a Lightning channel with one other person. So we already have shared UTXOs with with one person. Um, what Covenants allows you to do is it allows you to scale that up past a person, right? You can have shared UTXOs with many people, and the way this works is when you first make that shared UTXO, you have kind of a eject button, right? Which you all agree to. And you basically set it up in a way where you say, hey, listen, if any of us become or go offline or become, bad counterparties or bad, members of the shared UTXO, then the rest of us can eject, right? We can like go back on chain, and that's basically that's the covenant, right? It's the option, which is like a pre-signed option or pre-enabled option to go back on chain. Everyone gets to go back on chain if this happens, right? If if any of the parties become kind of unresponsive. Uh, Obviously, the incentive is for everyone to stay cooperative. And if everyone stays cooperative, then what it allows you to do is it allows you to update the channel state between all the parties in the channel. And when you update the channel state, so for example, like let's say you have a 10 party shared UTXO and one of the people inside of it want to give some of their sats to a new person, so like now you go from a 10 person shared UTXO to 11-person shared UTXO. All the other 9 people are going to say, yeah, that's fine, and they're going to sign the new state. And maybe during that time, the other 9 people are going to want to do a few little transactions, and so all 10 people get to share the fees associated with updating that. I'll say it's a channel state. That vernacular might be different, but we'll just stick with like the the Lightning vernacular because it's a little bit easier to comprehend. But you update the state of that shared UTXO, and the fees are shared amongst all the people involved in it. And when you update it, you add that, so in that example, you add another person. So now you have an 11-person shared UTXO. Now you update it so that the eject button, right, the unilateral exit is updated such that now, if any of the 11 people become unresponsive, then, you can eject back on chain. And you just keep on doing that and you scale it up and up. And what Covenants allows you to do is it allows you to easily or much easierly, that's not a word, but it, it allows you to scale it much easier, right? Right now with Lightning, like it's practically impossible to scale a Lightning channel past 3 people. I think there's really only 2-person Lightning channels, but 3 is kind of like the theoretical limit, or until things get really, really crazy complicated. With Covenants, you could theoretically scale this, into the hundreds or thousands, or maybe even higher with even more opcodes as we decide we want, you know, more and more complexity in shared UTXOs. But at least for now, you'd get like an immediate 1 or 2 order of magnitude in scaling because of it. So I think it's kind of an obvious way in which we could scale self custody, um, and it's very little risk because it's opt in, right? It's not like you have to share a UTXO, but the incentives would be such that you'd want to because you would have much lower fees, you'd have much better privacy, right? You can't actually see like it would be a taproot address that would just be like a single sig taproot on chain. So you don't even know like how many people are sharing the UTXO unless you're a part of it, you know. So from an outside perspective, right, outside observer, they don't really see anything other than a single sig taproot address going from one state to another. Um, and so it's like it's kind of it's low hanging fruit in my opinion, and it's just a matter of, in my opinion. I mean, I think it seems like yeah, there's some people who are scared of changes in general, but of the more technically inclined people, it seems like covenants is kind of the next thing that's coming, and it's more so a conversation of how we want to enable covenants, like which op codes we want to turn on or which ways we want to enable it. And so that's the conversation that's really being had at the moment.
Is there anything that you see that is kind of a technical concern or worry? And again, I'm no expert on covenants or opcodes really in general here, but um, it appears to me that most of the conversation is concerned about the unknown unknown. Like, what could we be enabling with covenants that we're not aware of or haven't thought of yet? But I'm not sure if there's anything else that's kind of been identified as a possible risk from adding it.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think the biggest concern that comes up is this idea of um, people having unspendable amounts in shared UTXOs. So if there were to be a unilateral exit of a covenant and some of the participants had very small amounts of satoshis as part of the covenant, then they wouldn't necessarily be able to take those satoshis on chain, and they might kind of get rugged, I suppose, right? But then you have to compare that to what the other option would be. And again, this would be an opt-in, shared UTXO anyways. It's not like people are forcing people to to, to do this. But the other option would be, okay, well, you either have cryptographically secured ownership of a share, a piece of a shared UTXO. That's one option. Or you trust a federation to to basically take care of the UTXOs that you're sharing inside of a mint or sharing inside of Liquid. That's another option. Or you just go full custodial and you keep your Bitcoin on an exchange. And in that case, you're trusting a single entity to manage the shared UTXOs that you have with everyone else as a part of that exchange, right? Those aren't cryptographically shared, but they're just kind of, they're shared in essence, right? That exchange controls a certain amount of UTXOs. It has a certain amount of users. Those users are kind of in essence sharing those UTXOs, but they don't actually have cryptographic ownership of their share. So I don't know. I mean, that's a concern, and I think it's valid. But at the same time, it's like the trade off is you either have like unruggable Sats in the sense that the like you don't have a custodian that can run off with them. You might get rugged in the sense that things happen, unilateral exits happen, and then you're left with unspendable UTXOs. But you'd have to weigh that with all the other options. In
Yeah,
my,
yeah,
I
I
mean,
think this
in
is
in
it's
my,
definitely trade-offs. Sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say like I think a a killer application of covenants could be where it's again, it's like you're buying Bitcoin on an exchange, and maybe the exchange itself is running like an ARC or something, which is one of these covenants enabled second layers, where it has these giant shared UTXOs. Um, so maybe your exchange is running that, and as you're buying the Bitcoin on the exchange, it's just directly going into its ARC, and so you have self custody of those Sats immediately, even though they're KYC'd, even though they're the the exchange itself is kind of managing the all of the activity, right? Like it's acting as the service provider for that ARC, but at least you could have unruggable funds from an exchange's point of view. And I think from the exchange's point of view, that might even be something they're interested in too, because then they'd have less liabilities, right? If they could just automatically put your Sats into kind of a self-custodial second layer like Arc. So something like this might be a win-win. And I think with covenants, we would start to see these different models emerge. Not every exchange is going to do that right away, but I can imagine an exchange like Cash App or an exchange like River being, maybe at the forefront of exploring some of these technologies and allowing their users to take self-custody immediately on second layers. And there wouldn't be this UX headache of like rebalancing channels, inbound liquidity, like how we have with Lightning right now.
Yeah, yeah, and I just wanted to say it's so all of these solutions have trade-offs. They're nothing is bulletproof here, and I just think it's fascinating to theorize about these different solutions and at least get it in people's heads that they might have to consider one of these things because while you have choices, you are going to have your hand forced at a certain point when the Bitcoin price goes up enough that you might have to consider changing from DCAing your 100 200 a month and just withdrawing into self custody when the fees are higher and the the Bitcoin price is higher, making that million sat minimum for UTXO kind of unrecommendable, I guess would say.